Hey guys, we're going to be doing an acrylic tutorial. You can pause this video as I'm going through the implements, materials, and products that you will be using. Now we're going to start with prepping the nail. So for the mannequin hand, I'm using a tip cutter, but for a real client, I will use nail clippers. Now I'm going in with a sanding band with a grit of 240. And with the speed of my drill, I'm going no higher than a speed of 7 RPMs. And here your nail should look like this. I removed the shine off the entire natural nail, getting as close to the cuticle as I can. Now going into tip application, you're going to need a tip that fits sidewall to the natural nail, a dapping dish of acetone, and some nail glue. The acetone is optional. That's just a little hack that I like to use for the mannequin hands because it's harder for the tip to adhere to it compared to a real client. So I like to dip the tip in a dapping dish of acetone to melt the tip a little bit. And then I'm going to apply the nail glue onto the tip and just hold the tip onto the nail, fitting sidewall to sidewall. Make sure that the nail tip is straight, and then also just hold still until the glue dries. And then you'll know that the glue is dry when you're able to let it go and the tip doesn't move at all. Now going in with the tip cutters, making sure the tip cutter is perpendicular to the nail tip to make sure that you are not causing any stress to the free edge. Now I'm going in with my 100-180 file. You could use 80-80, whichever you prefer. I'm starting off at the sidewalls, making sure that I am filing off any bit of the tip that is hanging off the edge. And then also just shaping, making sure that the tip is nice and square. I don't have to do too much because the tip is already square, but I'm just making sure everything is nice and flush with the natural nail. Now I'm just blending the natural nail to the nail tip, making sure it's nice and flush. You don't have to file the entire nail tip, I just did it for aesthetic purposes. Make sure you remove all the dust off the nail before this next step. Now that the nail is nice and prepped, we're going to go in with a dehydrator and a primer, only applying it on the natural nail, not on the plastic tip, and not on the client's skin as well. Now we're moving into the acrylic portion. I'm doing the 3-bead method. My first bead is going to be a bead large enough to cover the free edge of my nail. In this case, I think I'm using I want to say it's more of like a medium to large bead. And I'm going to use the body of the brush to pat and mold that acrylic onto the free edge, keeping my sides clean, nice and square. As you're doing your application, you might notice that your brush gets dry and that the acrylic starts to stick on the brush. Whenever that happens, just clean off your brush and make sure to dab it in a little bit of the monomer, dab off the excess, and then go back into shaping that acrylic on the nail. In between each bead, you want to clean off your brush in a dapping dish of acetone to get rid of any residue acrylic stuck in the brush, because if you keep dipping into that monomer that you have, that residue will make the monomer cloudy and then it'll change the consistency of your acrylic beads. And more than likely you'll get excess acrylic at the free edge. I just use a brush to kind of cut it off and then use my brush again to just get that bead off. Right here I'm using my finger because I have gloves on, but if you're not wearing gloves, don't use your finger. You could use a cuticle pusher, a wooden stick, you can use your brush, whichever, just as long as you're not touching the acrylic with your bare hands because you want to avoid getting contact dermatitis. Now I'm going in with my second bead. I'm going to place that in between my first bead and the cuticle area. And right here I'm starting off at the sides. I'm going to blend that in first with the first bead, and then I'm going to start to blend in that bottom half of my second bead into the first bead. I don't want to blend the entire bead because if I do, then I'm gonna lose the structure that I'm trying to build as I'm building the apex. So I'm only working mainly on the bottom half, and then I'll smooth out the top half if anything, but my main focus is blending that bottom half with the first bead that I laid down. As I'm blending out the acrylic, I'm using either the belly of the brush sometimes, or I'll use the tip of the brush in a feathering motion if I'm only working on a small area, but if I'm trying to blend out the entire nail, then I would use the body of the brush. Now the cuticle bead. This bead, I am placing it right below that cuticle area. Get my bead settled, and then I'm going to push it as close to the cuticle as I can without touching the skin. And then I'm just going to blend out the sides first. And then I'm going to blend out the rest of that bottom half of the bead. And then smooth out the rest of the bead as well. Always make sure you're cleaning up the sides, because since my shape is square, I want to make sure my sides are nice and clean so that I have a really crisp square shape. Now using my line of light on the nail, you could see where my acrylic wasn't the smoothest, which was at the very edge of the nail. I'm just adding a little bit of acrylic to smoothen that out. It didn't get rid of it completely, but it's nothing I couldn't have filed off, which you will see whenever we get into our shaping and filing. Whenever I'm filing, my first focus is the underside of the nail. I want to make sure that that is parallel to the natural nail, making sure it's nice and straight. Now I'm gonna start filing the sidewalls, making sure that they're nice and straight. You could use the line on that file. Mine is pink, making sure that's nice and parallel, just so that you know that what you're filing is angled correctly. With my application, I really don't need to do too much filing, because the application is nice and square, but I just want to refine the shape, make sure it's nice and crisp. Now I'm going in at the free edge, making sure that that is nice and straight as well. You can either have the client's finger down, or you can flip their hand upside down and file it on top. Now I'm going on top of the nail with the file, getting rid of any lumps, bumps, unevenness I created with the acrylic application. Again, the better your application is, the less filing you have to do. And as you can see, I'm only working on the free edge of the area, because it won't be too comfortable for your client trying to work on the upper half of the nail. With that, I will just go in with the e-file and work on the entire nail, so both the upper half and the free edge of the nail. Now after the filing, your nail should look like this, nice and smooth. Now I'm going in with my 5-in-1 panna bit, and I'm starting at the free edge, making sure I get rid of all the scratches on the nail. Again, with the e-file, you don't have to do too much because you did most of the work with the hand file. And right here, I'm going around the cuticle, sealing it, making sure it's nice and flush and even, and making sure that my drill bit is only hitting the acrylic and not the natural nail. I forgot to mention, but the drill is going at a speed of 15 RPMs. I don't like to keep it too high because I don't want to file off too much, so I normally stay at 15 RPMs. And here's me filing the underside, making sure, again, it's nice and smooth. And my goal with the e-file is to just refine the shape and then get rid of all the scratches I made with the hand file, just so that I have a good base for whenever I do my nail design. With the 5-in-1 bit, I don't need to buff, but if I have any like grooves or anything in the nail, I'll go in with the buffer. But my goal is to get rid of the scratches, because if I don't and I try to do any nail design, my polish will leak into the scratches of the acrylic, and then it'll be hard to clean up, and then it won't be the smoothest design whenever you're doing like French tips or any line art. Now here I'm just going to refine the undersides of my sidewalls, making sure that there's no acrylic hanging off the nail. And then I'm also going to go right up under that free edge, because sometimes it can look thick, so I go up under there just to thin it out, make sure it looks nice and flush. Normally I would go in after with a buffing block to smooth out any grooves caused by the 5-in-1 bit. Now here's my final product. Cuticle is nice and flush, and the apex is supporting the length of my free edge, and everything is nice and smooth. Thank you for watching. Comment down below if you have any questions.